Hello, this is a video about an artist who signs his work A. Martinez for Charlton Comics, and I believe his real name is Julio Cesar Medrano, an Argentinian artist of some note, although I couldn't find very much information about him other than pictures of a lot of his work. This first story is called Tonight, My Darling. Most of his work is inked by someone else. I suspect that this one might be inked by himself, but I can't say for sure. Typical romance story, boy meets girl. Martinez is big on figures, faces. His backgrounds are usually kind of limited, but he's very good at drawing the pretty girls. Ted, you know how I feel about you. Of course, Carol. This girl really wants him to say those three little words that he's resisting. So finally, she gets frustrated and says, "That's it, let me out." And he's like, "Oh, well, I should have brought a lawyer around and negotiate this date." And she's like, "Take me home." And he's like, "Well, this date, I thought we had something going, baby, but it turned out to be a long conversation." Screech. So this is where you get off, baby. This is the end of the line. I know it. So she's going in, and he comes to her and says, "I know you like me, but I'm just not ready to commit now." "Why aren't you?" "I love you. I don't know why you." He's like, "I just don't want to. You were asking for me to do something that I'm just not ready to commit to yet." "Oh, how bad? How could I have done that? Kiss me goodnight." She's like, He'll tell me someday, just not tonight." This next story, also by A. Martinez, which he also did this cover, as he did the last cover. The story is called Love and Learn. It's a story of this photographer and a model, and he's doing a a photo shoot, and all of a sudden this guy comes in, Gary. He's a movie star, and the model, her name's Dory. So they're introduced, and he's there to have publicity photos taken. Oh, I didn't mention, this is inked by Jean Elier. I think he's also an Argentinian artist, but I have to do more research. I forgot I should have done that before I made this video. So Gary and Dory take off, and the photographer is like, "Well, that blows my shooting schedule." He says, "Don't worry, I'll bring you a hamburger." So they start going out, and everywhere they go, people are like, "Oh, that's him. He's a movie star. I'm going to get his autograph." Yeah, I'm sure I've seen her in the movies too. So at first she's really digging it. The crowds of people coming wanting autographs. So he's wanting to see her every day. Then one day he's like, oh, I was looking for Gary. It's his manager. I forgot to mention him. So Dory's like, well, you know, what makes you think he's here? He's like, well, I don't know. I just thought I'd try it. Goodbye, she says. So this is a nice little montage here of what's going on. They're going out, and all around them is paparazzi, and they're going to all these fancy places. But she's getting a little down, and the manager comes up and says, hey, Dory, what's the matter? Big problems? Oh, I like going out with Gary, but there's always a crowd. That's his style. He likes crowds. Me, I'm more into a one-on-one relationship. And then Gary comes out, hey there, stealing my girl, Pete. Remember, as my agent, you only share 10%. So he takes her to a shooting set. He takes her out, and then the next day they're at a shooting session, and with the original photographer, and he's like, let's do some action scenes. And she trips over something, and she hurts herself. You know, oh, it hurts. It's really swollen. Let's call the doctor. Good camera art there. So she's convalescing with a cast on her leg, and so she can't go out, so she's not seeing Gary much. And the photographer's visiting, seeing how she's doing, and he finds out, you know, that Gary's been sending. She hasn't come, but he's been sending roses every day. So, you know, he's getting ready to go. There's someone at the door, and he's like, oh, don't worry, I'll let him in. I'm on my way out anyway. Gary? No, it's Pete. I dropped in to see what I could do for you. I wish you could get me out of this room. And he goes, oh, that's easy. And he picks her up and takes her out. And so let's go for a drive. And she's like, oh, this wind feels good in my hair or whatever. And so they go somewhere, and they're getting something to eat. And Gary comes up with another chick. And he's like, Dory, where have you been hiding the past few weeks? Oh, I've been away, Gary, far away. Welcome home, Dory. Let's have dinner tomorrow night. Sorry, I'll be busy tomorrow night and every day this week. She's like, oh, Pete, how could I have been so stupid? Yeah, he's that kind. He's, you know, that kind. But, and you, Pete, I love you, Dory. The end. Okay, this issue is Teen Confessions. Has a Martinez cover and 2 stories. Also both inked by Jean Eliar. And I looked her up, and it turns out she's a female born in Spain. I couldn't find much information other than that about her, though, other than a few credits. This story is The Beautiful Man Trap. Nice car. So it's a rich girl, poor boy kind of story. And she's trying to get his attention. And he's like, she finds out he likes this car. So she's like, let's go in half and half. I can afford $400 and you got $400. So they decide to buy it together. But he's not biting on her romance routine. So they buy the car, and he spends all his time trying to fix it up, and he gets it running really good. And she's like, well, at least he's talking to me now. Before this is over, Chris, at least you'll notice me. So she takes off her overalls and puts on her dress, gets all dolled up. So this other guy makes a play for her, and he's like, hey baby, let me drive the car. And she's like, no way. And he smashes the car. So the guy comes up and says, are you okay? And she's like, well, what about the car? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. We can always get another car. The end. So as the cover referred to Olympics, here we have fun and games time. The splash, of course, based on the cover. A. Martinez and Jean Eliar, 1972. So she's the athlete. Oh. She's practicing for the Olympics. I don't remember this story very well, but the artwork's nice. Grace Edmonds finished second. What a surprise. Guy, I did it. I'm going to Japan. Terrific, Grace. Guy helped me a lot. He encouraged me. Those times I nearly gave up. So she's also a skier. Or he's a skier. I don't know which. So it's off to Japan. Talk. And we all know what goes on at the Olympic Village. And of course, another athlete makes a play for her. So he takes her out, and Carl's method of communication doesn't require words. So her boyfriend comes along. Oh, well, I'm sorry. He's super cool. And he's like, oh, well, I shouldn't have wigged out a guy. I think he was just trying to help. I don't know what. But they sure signed a lot. They made up for no credits by signing every other page. So then the skating comes up. got some skiing action. Actually, I didn't concentrate too much on that. It's interesting artwork. Be careful, guy. And he falls. I hope he isn't hurt. Just run along and make all the girls happy. I'm going to sit up with a sick friend. And so, guy's up on his crutches, and you just won the gold medal as the loveliest man at the Sapporo Winter Olympics, guy. Men that to read the most in love competition. I'll accept that medal, Grace. The end. In beautiful Japan. Next we have in Just Married Comics, it's a serial. This is episode 2 by drawn by A. Martinez, David and Eileen. And this one is inked by Tony Zuniga. Is that Tony DeZuniga? I don't know, but it's definitely nice looking inking on this. So the story is David's Jewish and Eileen is Catholic, Irish Catholic, and they get married and their families are like upset. I guess they go to City Hall and they get married and they're on their honeymoon and they just don't want it to ever end. But he's like, come on, we've got to go back to town. I got to go to work. So they drive back to the city, and she's like, he's like, well, you know, I think that we can get, if we budget, we can get by on my salary. And she's like, well, I'd rather work, you know, as long as I can, she says. So she goes back to the office, and she's got a friend there who's Jewish, and she's telling her how to make potato latkes. And they're very in love, still on the honeymoon. Ring, who could that be? It's for you. Something about a rabbi, something about some arrangements? What arrangements? And it turns out his father arranged to have a rabbi do a Jewish wedding for him. And at first, he's not crazy about the idea. But Eileen is like, yeah, let's do it. So he's like, okay. He sets it up for next Sunday afternoon. So she's all happy. They're going to get married again. And they're staying in a borrowed apartment. And they go to tell her parents that that they're going to have a Jewish wedding, and her father's all upset. No, you can't go to that heathen place. But her mother is like, yeah, we'll definitely be there. So they're going through all this stuff, and he goes, be ready an hour early because we got to make a stop. So on the way to their wedding, to their Jewish wedding, he stops at a little church, and she goes in, and they're like, their parents are there and all her friends are there, and they have a Catholic wedding first. And he kissed the bride. Now on to the synagogue. And there it's a solemn ceremony with the incense wafting through, I guess. And they do the ceremony, and he says, "Oh, Rabbi, now you can kiss the bride." So I guess that's supposed to be a contrast in customs. And afterwards, they have a big party. And she's like, "I like the way I like the way Jewish people do their weddings." And there's another signature. So her father comes up and says, "Hey, we're going to redo the apartment. We've got a lot of room that we don't need. We're going to redo the upstairs so you can have an apartment." And his parents come up and say, "Oh, we got great news. The neighbors are moving out, so we've got the apartment so you can move in across the hall from us." And they're like, "No, we're going to do this. We're going to do that." They're having an argument. And so he says, "Oh, no, we've already found an apartment way across town." So she's like, "What apartment?" He says, "Don't worry, we'll find something." And she's like, "Actually, I would have liked living in an apartment in my parents' home, or an apartment near his parents." That's the end of this chapter. So finally, we have this, the eighth, another Just Married comic with a Martinez cover. And this is episode 8 of the David and Eileen story. So they've found an apartment, and all the neighbors are kind of put offish, and they haven't made any friends. So she decides, well, I'm going to break the ice, and she starts talking to someone. And they said, "Well, we said hi to you several times, but you guys were like in a trance." So they've been so in love that they didn't notice their neighbors, and they kind of snubbed them. But, they make it up and they become friends. And they're like, kind of familiar with each other. And they invite him to a party. So they go to a party, and it's kind of like a mixer. So he goes off with the neighbor's girlfriend. I forget his name, Daria or something. And so they're getting really cozy. And the guy is like playing up to her. So they're talking it over, and he said, "These people are kind of swingers, I think." He says, "Yeah, Daria, I wouldn't mind seeing some more of her. She's really built, baby, but not half as good as you, baby, Mrs. Goldman." And he knocks the brush out of her hand. Very passionate. So they start having their morning coffee together. And so they're at another party, and he sees, the neighbor's wife. She's making out with this other guy. And she's like, "Wow, Dinah, that's her name, not Daria, Dinah." And if Edgar walks in, he'll be pissed. And sure enough, he walks in, but she's like, "Oh, a little kiss doesn't mean anything." And she's like, "Well, if I ever caught David playing around like that, that would be the end of the ball game." So he goes out, and David's kind of all cushy, comfortable with this other girl, and her husband comes up to Eileen and kind of gets her into a corner and tries to make a move on her. And David comes out and sees it, And he gets kind of jealous and he breaks it up and said, oh, we're going to go. They're like, no, don't go. He's like, yeah, we're getting out of here. So she says, you know, those people are swingers, you know, and he's like, yeah, if he'd actually kissed you, I'd have smacked him one. And she's like, yeah, but you were getting close with Dinah and that other girl. And he's like, well, it's different for men. And she's like, no, it isn't. We're going to be equal or not. So they decide that they're not going to be swingers. Apparently this went for a while because the editorial board says they were thinking about going just one more issue with this serial, which would have been 9 parts. But if anybody wanted it to keep going, they might consider going on. So right now it's a mystery. Well, I hope you liked this video. A. Martinez or Julio Cesar Medrano. And if you liked it, be sure and like it. And leave your comments. And I'd like to know what you think. Have a good one.